And then I think. Okay, we're recording now. Perhaps the most grievous mistake of ours was to not recognize Al properly. We never gave Al the ceremonial gavel that he was supposed to get.
The cowbell.
Yeah, well, so Al's resilient and he showed up at every meeting with a cowbell. Did you bring him? All right, it's a good thing. So you now have a gavel.
Okay.
Yeah. And now you can convene the meeting. Try it out again. Get us started.
It's working.
All right. So,
Okay, so
introductions.
well, good evening, everybody, and good to see everybody at this meeting tonight. And we arrived safely. The weather hanging there with us. I know it was raining for a while and smoking and all that sort of kind of stuff. But it's good to see faces, people coming out and being part of this Rockingham Planning Board meeting tonight. So we have an agenda. We'll talk about the call to order and election of the officers. The 2024 work program presentation and the proposed budget adoption and the awards and recognition towards the end. Before we get started, let's do an introduction to everybody that's here tonight. So you know who I am. I'll say again, I'm Alan Davis and chairman of RPC.
Scott Vogel, RPC staff.
Tricia Cheever, RPC staff.
Village Romanic, RPC staff. Victoria Neely, RPC staff. Jen Ryder, Land Use Program Manager, RPC.
Tate Walker, Education Program Manager with RPC.
Patty Diano, Regional Planner at RPC.
All RPC people. Oh, you're special.
Oh, I've heard that before.
I'm John Morgan. I'm on the select board in Brentwood.
Darrell Britton, I'm on the select board for Class Town of Hampshire.
Joe Johnson is Stratton.
I'm Bob Dion, I'm planning board in Greenland.
I'm Frank Grant, representing Atkinson.
Beth Moreau, City Council of Portsmouth and Commissioner.
On the phone. Bill Winslow Ride. James Van Balkland, Southampton.
Jackie Jordan, right?
Peter Coffin, Kingston. Dennis Hebert, and my wife, brother Justin Knight, and Newington.
Morgan Pasco.
Lucy Cushman, Stratum.
Your daughter.
Steve Smith.
Christopher Joe Raymond. Howard Washington. And Carnegie, Hampton Planning Board Chair.
Planning board.
Gwen, oh,
That's okay.
Gwen English, Planning Board Exeter. Nat Pettigill, obviously staff.
I'm Rob Ryan, I just wandered into the
And I'm Tim Roach, I'm the director here at RPC. I don't know, okay, well, I'm gonna pause for me.
So, first, this is election of the officers.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just keep standing because it's easier for me, I don't know why. So what I really wanted to do, under 5 of these chairs, there's a title. One says chairman, one says vice chair, and it says director. So if you're sitting in one of those, just have to put your chair over. That's how we're gonna do this, but I thought that'd be a lot of fun. But we do have a process, and Jack and April, our nominating committee met. And reviewed our current slate of officers and executive committee members. Our typical pattern is for each officer to serve 2 consecutive years. It turns out this year is one of those gap years, so everybody was willing to come back and serve their 2nd year as officer. And the executive committee members all agreed to continue on for another term, so we did not have any open spots or any nominations, unless somebody wants to make a nomination from the floor. In your packet that I sent out, you should have a memo that shows our current slate of Al Davis as chair, Beth Morrow, you can read it if you want. From Portsmouth as our vice chair. Mike Terrell from Atkinson is not here tonight. And Glenn Koppelman from Kingston is our secretary. And Richard McDermott from Hampton Falls is our past chair. He's also not available this evening. And then our executive committee members at large are Valerie Gamache, Rebecca Noor from Seabrook, who's not here, Tim Moore, Plastow, wave to everybody, Tim. Barbara Kravitz from Hampton is on Zoom. Lucy Cushman from Stratham. Jim Doggett from Newton. Dennis Hebert from Newington. And Ryan Plummer from Exeter. So that is your slate of officers and executive committee and whatsoever not taken from the board. You can use that.
We have a motion to accept the nominees.
From James.
So. Second.
All right.
Any opposed?
Let's go.
We're all set.
All right, all in favor, everyone.
All in favor? All right.
There you go. Excellent. That's page one, really. I like that. So moving on to the work.
So next on our agenda is the work program presentation.
All right. So, I don't know, I've been here, this is my 6th year, believe it or not. And this annual meeting is sort of transitioned, I think partly due to the craziness of the last 3 years, but probably partly from my own sort of desire to maybe switch it up a bit and get away from just doing a speaker and dinner and looking more at the commission and reflecting on the past year, the work that we've done, the great work the staff has done. And then taking a look ahead for next year. So we sort of put the presentation together the last couple of years. To do that sort of reflection and looking forward approach. So we have a presentation tonight that covers, some of the accomplishments, some of the highlights of the past year. Some of the things that we do that you may or may not know of. And then looking ahead to the next year, which will lead to a, sort of a discussion of the budget, so you can see what all that work is, how it's getting paid for. So why don't I get it started with the presentation, and I'm gonna try to just move up here. That work? Rob. The clicker didn't work. Oh, there it is. All right, I'm working now. All right. So one of the things that we've done over the last couple of years is had I don't know, should I talk about this in Unionville? Is anyone in Unionville in here? Oh, all right, they're not here. Anyway, so we do. We do an electricity aggregation program. Pull together communities that are interested. To do new purchase of electricity. You go out to a competitive supplier. And try to get a better price on electricity. What that does is we do the legwork, so all that the cost of doing all that work is burdened by the commission, not on the communities. We put out an RPC and we get a better price for electricity. To do that, we became a registered aggregator. PUC a few years ago. Our current aggregation is Hampton Falls and the library, Kingston, the Kingston Library, the town of Newton and the town of Stratham. So it's pretty small. But the big thing here is the current rate. This is where the Unitil people don't want to see this, but the current rate with Unitil is 23 cents per kilowatt hour. Right now, before the August rates will come out soon, but these towns are currently paying 13 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's a great savings. If your town doesn't already do this on its own, or if you haven't moved to community, what is it? Community power. there's options out there, but it's been great. I think Stratum saved about $21,000 in the first go around with us, which is 3 years of their dues. So there you go. Good deal. The other thing that's probably the biggest thing this year, if I had to sum up the year, was the regional housing needs assessment. This is probably the third time I've been involved with the housing needs assessment. I like this one the best. Staff did a great job with it. And really the reason I like it is that we didn't come forward with a number that says your town is deficient by 500 units. We've worked collaboratively with all the RPCs, the New Hampshire BEA, Office of Planning and Development, and came up with an approach that looked at what it would take to get back to a fair market, a balanced market, to help get housing costs under control. As it turns out, there are numbers in there, and there's information and data that you can use to make your housing decisions. But essentially, the upshot of it is we think we need about 14,500 new housing units by 2040. Right? No one community can do that. It's going to be a regional effort, a collective effort. And really what that's allowed us to do is have conversations with communities. We are currently working with, Fremont, Northampton, Brentwood, Plastow, Rye, Newton, Hampton, in the Little Boar's Head Village District in Northampton, on planning grants to advance that housing conversation. I was just out in Sandown last week talking to them about the housing assessment, and they're interested in working on more housing work with us. So it's been a real opportunity, real nice communication to have people want to engage in the conversation as opposed to fearing the idea of additional housing. So it's a nice change, and it's really a good opportunity for us. Also, as part of this New Hampshire Housing Toolbox is out. There's ongoing, what do you call them, trainings? Yeah, webinars, I guess, to talk about different opportunities and ways you can work with your community to incentivize housing and figure out what works for you, because there's no one size that's going to fit everything. So I should have said at the beginning of this is that all the staff is going to come up and talk about their projects. Is what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do now is hand it off to Scott, I believe, and he's going to talk a little bit about some of the age-friendly work that you have a booming voice as you're talking, so
I can use my outside voice. All right, so we're now in the closing stretch of our 2-year grant from the Tufts Land Foundation and AARP New Hampshire that has supported our regional age-friendly communities initiative for the RPC region. And Maddie Diano and Jill Longbell and I are the primary staff that have been working on this project. But the goal of this project has been to help RPC communities plan for and better address the needs of older residents now and over the next 20 years, as we're looking at significant growth in our older adult population. We're looking at a growth of the population over age 75, almost tripling between now and 2045. So as part of this project, we've conducted age-friendly community assessments for 8 communities. 6 of those were last year. We are working on 2 of them, finishing up this spring, Kingston and Newton this past spring. These have used a framework developed by AARP that consists of a community-wide survey, 1 or 2 community forums, and guidance from a local steering committee, and then pulling the information from all of that into a community assessment that we bring back to the towns. Across the 8 communities, we have gathered more than 1,750 surveys thus far, and actually the themes that have come out of those surveys and of the community forums have been remarkably consistent across the 8 communities, and you see really 5 key themes up here. Starting at the top with transportation options, the survey asked a question about what concerns you most about aging in place in your community, and far and away the most common response to that, between 60 and 70% of responses in each community, was how will I get where I need to go once I age out of driving? But also frequently heard about concerns over availability and cost of in-home support services to allow folks to age in place in their own homes, having housing options, access to social interaction opportunities, recreational activities, and then information flow, being able to know what services and programs and activities are already available in your community. In the second year of the grant, this spring, we've also been working on implementation projects that were identified by 2 of the towns who participated in assessments last year. Jill and Maddie have been working with the town of Stratham on a communication strategy to help ensure that all older residents in town are getting information about services and programs that are already in place, and also developing a local resource guide. And then I've been working with Fremont in expanding transportation options for seniors. So this has also been a big year for work on the New Hampshire Seacoast Greenway project, which is something that RPC has been involved with since 2008, when we did a conceptual design and implementation project for the New Hampshire section of the East Coast Greenway. This spring, construction actually started on the trail, on phase 1 of the trail, starting from the Northampton town line, heading north towards Portsmouth. You see on the left here, the 4 phases of construction for the rail trail itself. There's a second phase that will be in the north part of Hampton that is in design still, should begin construction next spring. And both phase 1 and phase 1A, or 1A and 1B here, should be completed by late 2024. And then there's funding that's been programmed. We worked with the town of Seabrook to get funding into the 10-year plan for the Seabrook section. It'll be built in 2030, and the Hampton Falls in the south part of Hampton through Hampton Marsh for construction in 2032. This last 2 years, we've also had a technical assistance grant from the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program. And with the assistance of National Park Service, we've incorporated a new regional nonprofit trail organization, the New Hampshire Seacoast Greenway Alliance, gotten that up and running. The Park Service helped us organize a series of charrettes or design workshops last fall with a team of pro bono landscape architects, engineers, architects that developed conceptual designs for 9 trailhead facilities between Hampton and Portsmouth. And then Park Service also helped us design develop a trail signage plan. And we've managed to get a grant for $25,000 to install signage once that trail is completed. You see here a couple of slides out or pages out of that signage plan with the different sign types along the bottom. Drawing on those conceptual designs, we worked with Portsmouth this winter on a earmark application to Congressman Pappas's office for 2 trailheads. We're working with Rye and Greenland currently on a federal recreational trails program grant for another trailhead at Breakfast Hill Road. So looking forward to seeing further progress on this and actually having a trail to go out on by next fall. So with that, let me turn it over to Dave to talk further about the transportation program.
Remember the order of things. All right, so I'm just going to cover some highlights of the transportation program. So we are there we go. All right, so we are wrapping up year 2 of our 2-year unified planning work program. So that's really what is the primary funding source for the transportation planning. And so by the end of this month, over those 2 years, we'll have accomplished about 14,500 hours of transportation planning. and support for our communities over these last 2 years. Big things that are involved in that. First, probably the most recent thing is the establishing our priorities for the most recent iteration of the state tenure plan, which we accomplished meeting, I think this was the April meeting. Didn't quite turn out like we thought, but we will still get several projects added to the tenure plan this round. We have also, over these last 2 years, updated the Region 8 and the Region 10 coordinated public transit human services transportation plans. Those are the Region 8 and Region 10 are the one is the Seacoast region, one is the Greater Derry, Greater Salem, Manchester area. Those are the 2 areas in our region, partially within our region. And those plans look to better coordinate transportation for people with special transportation within the regions. So, and then finally on this slide, we participate in a number of project advisory committees with the communities and with DOT for the implementation of projects. And particularly over the last couple of years, we've been involved heavily in the Seabrook-Hampton Route 1A Bridge project, the Ocean Boulevard project in Hampton, the Main Street project in Plattsdale, looking at doing some traffic calming there, and the Route 125 improvements that are being planned in Epic. And there's a few more things I want to just touch on. We've been working with the town of Exeter on developing their light pedestrian plan. We've gotten through the existing conditions, the public input, and the project identification stage of that project, and we'll be completing that later this year. We also completed our full system performance report. We have approximately 25 metrics that we are required to address under federal regulations. And for the first time, we pulled that all together into one document and tried to measure progress against targets on all those measures. We also worked this winter to pull together road safety audit applications for 3 communities. We worked with Brentwood, Exeter, and Raymond to get those in place. And I did hear that the Brentwood project got listed as the top priority. I've not heard about the other projects. And then finally, we also worked with our communities to get CMAQ or congestion mitigation or quality program projects submitted. And there were 5 projects submitted from the region, from communities and within the region, and all those 5 projects have been funded for funding. And then there were additional 6 electric vehicle related projects that the DOT has tabled for now while they're still figuring out how to implement the new federal regulations that came out later this spring. So there's a lot of opportunity there as well. So, and I'm not sure who's next on board. Jen, all right.
Just click the slide and see.
I'm about to lose my voice, so if you can't hear me, let me know. So for the local planning assistance that we do with the land use sort of side of the office, we've been really busy this year. A couple of the items that folks don't always know that the land use services that RPC provides, we do a lot of plan review and procedural assistance, not simply for our circuit rider communities, but we get a lot of inquiries from towns that maybe have their own consultant planner or that don't have planning staff. So we get those kinds of inquiries quite often and more frequently as towns are getting more and more complicated applications. We do master plan updates. We worked on a good number of master plans, either whole master plans or chapter by chapter amendments this year. And we'll be in upcoming lots of zoning regulations, lots of adoption processes covering the gamut from excavation regulations to housing related to natural resources protection to just basic procedural things that those are the things that sometimes get you for those of you that are on planning boards or zoning boards. We've been helping continually with the MS4 stormwater compliance, and that might ramp up as the new renewal of that permit comes into play in the next 18 months or so. Something else that we do that we don't brag about a lot, but I'm going to right now, is the amount of grants that we write in a given year. Anyone we're doing housing opportunity grants with, we help write those grants for those communities. We wrote 2 different source water protection grants that are helping 5 of our communities. We've written 2 coastal resiliency grants, and then 3 grants being offered by the Scottsboro Region Estuary Partnership that's going to cover 9 different towns, in addition to all the transportation work that we do. So we're trying to bring a lot of dollars to our communities to help you guys get to your needs. So we are specifically kind of the big things are doing community support with circuit riding. So we serve as consultant planners to 7 communities. Those numbers are always shifting a little bit. Some years we're a little more, some years we're a little bit less, but we're pretty consistent in providing a good support to 1/3 of our communities. We've helped with a lot of master plans. We've had 3 regional impact developments in the past year that we've evaluated, provided comment for. We have done coastal resiliency efforts for 100% of our coastal communities. 300 staff hours going towards planning board assistance. And the last number on the bottom, we've had 48 presentations on topics covering land use to transportation to natural resources. I just want to point out that number when we did this presentation last year is 12. So to give you an idea of the amount of work we're doing out in the region and coming to talk to people has quadrupled. So, and I think it's going to continue. There's a lot of hot topics out there. Housing is one of them, but so is a lot of the competing things that feed into that. And our communities need a lot. So that's what we're here to do. With that, sorry, lost my order. Some of the source water protection project I started to lead on this year was we got some assistance from DES, the source water protection program, to actually provide some technical assistance to a couple of our communities, very specifically Hampton and Epping. We did a really strong effort of working through their zoning, doing public education out there to put together comprehensive groundwater zoning amendments. Both communities already had groundwater ordinances on the books, but we assisted them in expanding them in some cases, better defining them and making them easier to administer and more legally defensible. Overall, the result was to better protect the groundwater resources moving forward. Now I think I'm on to Matt.
So each year, the RPC receives funding from New Hampshire DES Coastal Zone Program to provide technical assistance to our coastal communities in the areas of climate adaptation, coastal resilience, north water protection, stormwater management, etc. And with that funding this year, we had the pleasure of working with the towns of Exeter, Seabrook, and Newcastle to help advance some coastal and climate adaptation-based projects that had been identified by those communities as priorities in some of their various planning documents. So we worked with the town of Exeter to make modifications to the town's floodplain management ordinance to strengthen the town's resilience to future flooding events. More specifically, we increased the freeboard requirement from 1 foot to 2 feet, and we developed the sea level rise risk areas. And the point of the sea level rise risk areas was to show which areas in town are most susceptible to being inundated by future sea level rise. And so I have this map here on the right. This is downtown Exeter. The pink area is the FEMA designated special flood hazard area, and the dark blue that's sort of around the pink area is a 4-foot sea level rise scenario overlaid on top of that data. So we incorporated the sea level rise projections into the town zoning ordinance for the first time, purely as an educational tool and a planning tool for the public and staff and local land use boards to begin planning for projected sea level rise. The intent of these sea level rise risk areas is to be advisory at this point in time. Again, it's just an educational and a planning tool for the community to use to begin planning for sea level rise. We also worked with the town of Seabrook this year to help establish a coastal resilience committee in town, or what we're calling the coastal resilience team. And the purpose of this team is to bring together town staff, officials, board and committee members, and interested members of the public to talk about and advance some of the town's priorities related to climate change adaptation. Thus far, we've had some really rich conversations with the coastal resilience team about coastal issues. And from those discussions, our first project with Seabrook this year was a robust grant application to DES's coastal resilience grant program to explore alternative dune walkover design concepts that improve accessibility to the town's beaches while maintaining and preserving the integrity of the ecologically sensitive sand dune systems. We're still waiting to hear on that, but that was our first project with the coastal resilience. And we also worked with the town of Newcastle to incorporate sea level rise projection into the town's master plan. The Flood Smart Seacoast project started, this was a project that started in 2021. With funding provided by NOAA, the RPC is working with New Hampshire DES on a multifaceted project to help advance coastal resilience, floodplain management, and hazard mitigation in New Hampshire's coastal communities. This year, with that funding, we were able to assist the town of Rye in preparing a grant application to FEMA's Building Resilient Infrastructure and Community Grant Program to conduct a vulnerability assessment of the town's sewer infrastructure with projected sea level rise scenarios. We also applied to that grant to replace some outdated equipment. Also, with the Flood Smart Seacoast project, we're working with the town of Hampton on two distinct projects. The first is incorporating sea level rise projections and higher floodplain management standards into the town's floodplain development ordinance. And the second project is working with the town to develop a process by which the town will organize and facilitate federally funded home elevation and voluntary buyout projects in town for homeowners looking for funding to elevate their home or sell their home with worsening storms and increased flooding events. So those two projects are still ongoing. We're looking forward to working with you on that. I don't know.
That's me.
Oh.
I won't worry about the microphone. I think I can be loud enough. So the GIS department, despite doing all of the other things that we do, I wanted to highlight some of the cooler things that we've done this year. So I threw out our GIS partnerships, two of them very recent. So the top map that we're looking at here is some of our solid waste, but we partnered with the Northeast Resource Recovery Association, NARA, to create a story map that they used at their annual conference about 2 weeks ago. And it involved creating a lot of GIS data throughout the entire Northeast. And it was an interesting project for us to partner in with. And the hope is that we'll become a partner with NARA in the future for other projects. They're really excited to see their data. They don't have a GIS department. They're really excited to see their data start to dance on the screen. And they've been having a lot of fun poking around through it. And we threw in some demographics and other things within the story map, and then also a live map. So anytime they can bring up their data and just take a look at it. So it's been a fun partnership, and I think it's going to go far for both agencies. Down in the bottom right-hand corner, this is extremely new within the past 2 weeks. The Southeast Land Trust of New Hampshire approached us and asked their GIS person had left the agency, and so they asked us to be the stopgap for them. So I've been even within the 1 week that we've had the partnership, I've already done 2 projects for them as they're working on various acquisitions and other things. They need maps rapidly. So it's created a cool little partnership where we can work together with them hand in hand. And we've always had a relationship with them, but making it a little bit tighter. So it's been a fun project, and it's been interesting to see how we merge and work together. So these were just 2 projects that I wanted to highlight from the GIS department this year. We're still doing our tax map projects. We just completed tax maps for Hampton Falls, and in the past year, we've spun up a website for the town of Northampton with their tax parcels and updates. So it's been an interesting, fun year in the GIS department. Trisha's coming up next.
Yes, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how we are actually using GIS and making a bigger part of public input and outreach. And one of the things we did, I don't know if you guys remember that big storm we had around Christmas time. We actually sent out a survey around that time to gather some information, data, and images on that storm that we were actually able to use in a story map format. And the story map told a story, and it showed that the destruction and the inundation that happened on that December storm had happened many times again. And so using this survey, we are looking to actually continue this initiative and gather more information and see what else is going on along the coast. So you might be seeing that, and that is not an invitation to become a storm chaser, but, yeah, so that is something that we're looking to do on, and I'll hand it back to him.
What a year, huh? So, yeah, if it's first, can we give the staff a round of applause for their? I don't do anything. So it's all done, so I really appreciate that. So looking ahead, fiscal 24, and this will get into our adoption of the budget. That is not what I expected to go first, but it is. So we're gonna go ahead and just talk about what's coming up. We're gonna have Dave, are you gonna talk about this one? Or Trish? Oh, sorry. I get the pleasure to introduce Kayla. Robin, like I say it wrong all the time, our newest staff person and regional planner. So what's coming up for fiscal 24?
Buddy. Right, so for transportation planning for fiscal year 24, we're thinking about the long range transportation planning. We're doing an enhanced outreach update. So we'll have a new survey coming out to sort of assess the new data, see what people are needing in communities as far as those transportation needs. The new update will also be more clear, user friendliness, be able to quickly get the data that you need, you can find out sort of what's happening in your community. The idea is to sort of make it less technical and less word heavy and sort of make it a really beautiful document that you can access really easily. We're also going to integrate the findings of the regional housing needs assessment into the long range transportation plan. So making sure we have good synergy between how we're planning housing and transportation, as well as the resiliency aspects and PEL, which is planning and environmental. So incorporating more resilience and sustainability framework into the LRTP. We'll have more of our recurring 10-year GASSET hearings. So that will be in September and October. We're anticipating those, as well as the Safety Action Plan Development Grants. Safe Streets for All is an initiative from the Federal Highway Fund Administration. Federal Highway gave us this grant so that we can develop implementation plans of how we might make our road system safer for people of all different mobility needs and transportation modes. And once those are completed, all of the communities with those grants will be eligible for the implementation grants, which then allow you to put those projects into action. We're also going to be doing a coast transit stop accessibility study. So thinking about sort of that last mile, so how pedestrians access the transit stops for the routes that they go on, and what that sort of looks like in every community where we have road service. And as Scott talked about, continued East Coast Greenway / Hampshire Seacoast Greenway trailhead development and funding. We'll also be completing the Exeter Bike Ped Plan, and then thinking about the Commute Smart revitalization, which will have incoming CNAC funding, so that congestion mitigation, air quality, and how we will sort of use those funds to support more commuter competitions, like the Commuter Smart B2B Challenge, as well as more resources for members.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things that I hate as a planner is our plans. We spend all this time and effort planning them, and then we don't do anything with those plans. And have you ever experienced that planning? So one of our very strong efforts we've been doing the past couple of years is moving things forward on all of the topics and projects that we've been working on. So we've been for about the past 8 years really pushing forward on source water protection. Luckily, DES thinks we do a good job, and they keep being willing to fund a lot of our efforts. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. We are moving forward with coastal resiliency and a lot of the work that Maddie has been pushing forward with a lot of our communities and keeping people moving along, keeping momentum going. And then housing assistance, which you have heard housing a lot. We are talking with so many of our communities, even ones we're not doing grants with. That conversation is really continuing, so we're really excited to see how that plays out over the next year. I don't have the clicker. Can you go to the next slide? Okay. So as I was mentioning with our source water protection grants, we have been trying to move forward with the latest data by updating zoning in a lot of municipalities, having better plans, basically to equal better protection of our drinking water resources, because if we don't have clean drinking water, the rest of it kind of doesn't matter. So one of the ways we're moving forward are two different grants that we obtained this year. One is to get a couple of our communities to be up to speed on the MS4 permit requirements through EPA by updating or amending some of their stormwater management regulations. This is a very targeted grant, but we are really excited to be starting work with Plastow, Kingston, and we actually get to work with Salem, which I'm really excited to. I've never gotten directly work with Salem, so it's exciting. And then the second thing we're going to be doing is working with the towns of Raymond and Fremont to, in Raymond's case, to update their source water protection plan. And then with the town of Fremont developing water protection plan for the first time. I worked with them about 5 years ago to update their zoning and do a lot of education and outreach on their aquifer protection district. So this will be sort of the next step. They're two very different communities when it comes to water resources, with Raymond having a municipal water system and then the town of Fremont relying almost entirely on on-site wells. So two very different situations, but they are neighboring communities. So it'll be really nice to see that those two projects sort of dovetail together. And then moving on next is coastal resilience.
Hello again. So looking ahead for coastal resilience planning at RPC, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to continue with the Flood Smart Seacoast project. We're going to be working with the town of Hampton to incorporate sea level rise projections and higher floodplain management standards into their floodplain management ordinance. We're going to continue working with Hampton to develop a process by which the town applies for FEMA funding for home elevations and voluntary buyouts on behalf of property owners. And then as for our CCP technical assistance to coastal communities, we're going to continue working with Seabrook to establish this coastal resilience team and keep that momentum in town. We're going to revisit our community's priorities related to climate adaptation and coastal resilience. You might recall one of our initiatives last year was to comb through each of our towns' planning documents and pull out those projects that might be sitting on the shelf and touch base with each of our coastal communities and say, hey, is this still something that you want to do? We can help with it. We're going to be working to advance our regional resilience and sustainability program. This came out of a prior grant in 2020, I believe. And then we're also working on a new project for salt marsh resilience, where we're going to be working with DES to identify parcels within salt marsh and to identify ownership with the goal of seeing if we can preserve those parcels within the salt marsh. And then up and coming, the story map that Tricia talked about, which documented the impacts of the December 23rd storm. The story map, we were invited to deliver a presentation on the story map at the Northern New England chapter of the American Planning Association conference this year in October. So in Newcastle at the Wentworth, yes.
Victoria.
Hello, everyone. I am another new planner, although I should have won one, I believe, before Michaela. So housing, hot topic, as a lot of you know, the HOP grants have been quite a big deal for Invest New Hampshire. As of right now, there is $10 million funding. It hasn't been passed just yet. Working on it. We are unsure of how that will affect HOP in the future. We do have some continuing housing conversations for Brentwood, Hampton, Little Forest, and Village District, Newton, Pastel, Rye, and Sandown. So a lot of these projects will include land use audits, surveys. We're doing a visual preference survey, public engagement events, build out analyses. And all that information is going to lead to updating some master plan housing chapters and hopefully have some good zoning amendments to promote housing in a effective and well thought out way.
And all of that for the low price of $11,111.11. What's that?
It's like, sounds like the price is right.
All right, and I do this, I can't help myself. So this is, I'm gonna talk about it. But that's the amount of our budget that comes out of the state of New Hampshire. Everything else is on the back of the communities, about 150,000, and I'll move on in a second. Or these guys spend their days writing grants and chasing dollars, which is great. But it really makes it difficult to be proactive planners when you're constantly looking for the next dollar. And sometimes what that leads to is the only dollars we can find may or may not be of interest to your community, really. I mean, they usually are, but there's that struggle. Sometimes things, you might have other priorities, and you're gonna have the money for it. So it's an issue, and I put it out there as my annual plea and my public service announcement that we need to do something about some sort of base level of funding for regional planning commissions across the board. This, however, is a year that we don't need it because it's raining federal money, which is a good thing. It's helping us right now get a lot done. All that stuff that everyone just talked about the upcoming year, totals out to about $1.7 million in revenue, which is, and that's been here the longest. It's the largest budget I think we've ever seen. I did not try to check that against inflation, but it's probably up there, even if I did that. What I do with the budget, and the members of the executive committee can speak to this there, we go through this budget 2 or 3 times from March through now, reviewing what's out there, what we expect to have, what's realistic, what we have contracts for already, and arrive at this at the May meeting as our proposed budget. And this is what you see here for revenue and resources on the screen. Quickly running through it. Oops, wrong button. Dues, the dues paying member communities comes in at about $151,000. It's a little less than 10% of this budget. Transportation dollars. This is everything that comes through federal highway, federal transit. And this year in particular, that's larger because thanks to the work of Dave Walker and some others in the office and around the state, we have a Safe Streets for All grant that comes in at 250,000, give or take. Only about 25,000 of that we're actually using. It's going to be largely contracted out to a consultant, but between that and a 30% increase in federal funding, that's a large number. Before we get too excited about 30% more in transportation dollars, we haven't seen an increase in transportation dollars in probably 10 years. So I think that brings us back to sort of offset the inflation over the last 10 years. But nonetheless, we're grateful, and it's a good opportunity for the region. I already talked about the $11,000. We won't go into that again. The rest of our budget is made up of local contracts, a lot of circuit riding where we send a planner out to serve as your community's de facto planner. We have, I think, 8 communities this year that we're going to be working with. In that number, HOP grants are in there as well. Quite a bit of work on the local level this year. On the federal side, there is a lot of our resilience money is in that category, coastal resilience dollars. Then we get some miscellaneous revenue. Much of that is just we pay for some data that the other RPCs use, and they pay us back, which is why we have $32,000 miscellaneous revenue. But the total again is $1.7 million, almost $1.76 million. On the expense side, any of you that run a business or an agency probably know that personnel expenses are generally the largest. Makes up the bulk of our expenses. The contracted services are when we hire consultants. Most of that $372,000 is for that Safe Streets for All. I think about 225 of that is for the Safe Streets for All grant. Our rent, $52,000. I think that's staying flat for the next 3 years. Is that what we agreed to? I think so. Yeah. Plus, they fixed the conference room. You got to come into the office once we get the tables and see the conference room. It looks great. Office expenses, business expenses, a lot of software purchases, things like that. So the total expenses come in at about 1.6 million, which give us a pretty large reserve of $86,000. Now, given the amount of work that we have, we probably need another half person. So there are a number of outs grants that we don't have word on yet. It could very well be that if some of those additional grants come in, that we hire an additional person and that will offset a lot of that reserve. I don't, we never end up walking out of here with $86,000 in our pocket. It just, it unfortunately doesn't happen. But bottom line is we have a strong budget. We're in a good position this year. And we got a lot of work to do. So with that, the quicker stuff working again, but that's okay. So I think we just need a motion on that. There.
Asking for a motion to accept the 2024 budget. Adoption.
Second.
So it's Lang and Jim.
Any opposed?
I,
Everybody.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right, see that gavel, man. Should have given you that a year ago. All right, next up.
It's a award recognition.
Yeah,
This is the fun part.
the fun part, this is, we get to sort of celebrate each other, right? What is that? All right, very good. We get another contract. All right, so as I mentioned at the beginning, sort of keeping with our theme of trying to get back to our pre-COVID, restoring the traditions and our recognitions, we typically have recognized the service of you all for the time that you put in, your volunteerism at each year at the annual meeting. And I don't think we've done that since 2019. We decided to try to make that up and write that. So what I've got is our recognitions for service for going back to 2020. A couple of you are here, a few of you are here, so I'll try to get these out to you now. So for, as of 2020, 5 years of service. Oh. All right. What do you want to remember? No, so 5 years of service, we had Peter Coffin of Kingston and Lucy Cushman of Stratham. And in 2020, it was Tim Moore's 20th year as a commissioner. So Tim, 20 years. And not here tonight, but I wanted to recognize Steve Gerardo of Greenland in 2020 was his 10th year. And Mike Terrell in Atkinson, it was his 10th year in 2020. So moving on to 2021. In 2021, it was Dennis Hebert's 5th year. And Glenn English's 20th year. Where are you, Glenn? And not here tonight, Richard McDermott was at 15 years in 2021, so. In 2022, 5 years, our own Al Davis. And James Van Bockelen was 5 years in 2022. James, we don't see you enough. And Peter Britz, 10 years, dude. And then finally catching up to the current year of 2023. We have at 10 years, we have Jim Doggett. And Phil Winslow, where are you, Phil? You're back there. There you go. And then on Zoom at 15 years, we have Barbara Kravitz. Yeah. Thanks, Barbara. And also not here tonight is Mark Olson of Hampton, is also at 15 years. And if we missed anyone, we'll apologize, we'll get you next year. But it's good to catch up on that and really appreciate all the work you all do and the time and the commitment. I mean, some of you guys, 20 years, isn't it? Great, thank you. So next, what I wanted to do is move on to the awards again, trying to get back into our regular routine here. We typically have two awards. We have the James Hayden Award and Daniel Quinlan Award that we give out each year, and based on your nominations. I'm going to start with the James Hayden Award. The James Hayden Award was established in remembrance of Jim Hayden. He's an RPC commissioner from Newfield, a longtime conservationist for the Natural Resource Conservation Service for Rockingham County. The Hayden Award is intended to recognize those in the region who have made a significant contribution to their community or greater region in natural resource conservation planning. This year's Hayden Award recipient is Dennis Quintal of East Kingston. He's not here tonight. Dennis was nominated by the East Kingston Planning Board Chair, Joshua Bath, and was recognized for his long-term service as the chair of the Conservation Commission. He serves as the town engineer, focusing on wastewater management, wetland protection, as well as tirelessly working to conserve open space. Again, Dennis was not available to accept this award tonight. So I'm going to ad-lib this and say maybe we can bring it to East Kingston tomorrow night, because I think Jen and Victoria are going there. So then I will pass it off to you. We can bring it back. Next is the Daniel Quinlan Award. The Daniel Quinlan Award was established in memory of Daniel Quinlan, a long-serving commissioner and twice RPC chairman from Wyndham. Dan worked to ensure the best for the commission, but also to ensure that the commission did its best to serve the community and region. And his skill was bringing people together to solve problems. I want you to let that sink in for a minute, because I think this really fits for tonight's recipient. The Quinlan Award is given in recognition of those in the region who have made significant contributions to sound community and regional planning and have fostered intermunicipal communication and collaboration. This year's nomination was made anonymously. While it's unusual for an anonymous nomination to be brought forward, the RPC nominating committee believed that it spoke to the spirit and intent of the award. In a time where divisiveness is the rule, this individual's work is reaching across the aisle and garnering the respect of so many in Brentwood and beyond. The individual is a member of the Select Board, the Economic Development Committee, sits on the Planning Board, former state senator. There's probably a lot of stuff I don't even have here. In his nomination, it was noted that he was willing to take on controversial topics and work hard at bringing people together. That's really the true embodiment of the Quinlan Award. So we're really pleased to award this to John Morgan of Brentwood.
Can you all hear me? Is that okay? So, it's actually really intimidating to be here in this room with public servants of 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. So thank you to all of you who have served Rockingham County and New Hampshire for so long. It's even more intimidating to be here with you all who have done all of that incredible work, from everything from floodplains to transportation to housing needs assessments. That's incredible work, and I'm so grateful as a resident of this community and lifelong New Hampshire. So thank you all for everything that you're doing. I don't feel like I deserve this award just yet, but what's that?
Give it back.
In Brentwood, we have a long way to go, and over the last 4 or 5 years, we have there's a sense of reinvigoration and passion for service to our community, and it is something that I'm really excited to start to see. And a lot of it has to do with the work of the RPC, and we see a lot of you all over in Brentwood pretty frequently. So thank you to you all, and I saw Steph Kizza is on Zoom. Doug Finnan is here from Brentwood, and so we're really starting to see a lot of folks being willing to step up in Brentwood, to serve the needs of the community, and that's what it's all about. So thank you all for this. I really appreciate it.
Well, normally that would be it, but we do have a new award. Hold on, I don't get it yet. So the concept of this award came up in late 2019, 2020. I think might have been Tim Moore that suggested it, but the idea is to recognize extraordinary service and volunteerism for the benefit of the RPC communities in guiding land use planning and economic development, preservation of a healthy environment, planning for a vibrant and resilient future while promoting growth and sustainability for the region. It's intended to recognize individuals that have dedicated their time to community service through deep involvement in community planning and leadership. So with the recent passing of our longtime commissioner, Mary Allen from Newton, we felt it appropriate to sort of make this award happen and create the Mary M. Allen Lifetime Achievement Award. So this award is going to a Kingston resident who's going to know immediately who it is. But he's well known as the keeper of his prized historic barn and formidable evergreen Christmas tree farm. He's demonstrated leadership in the town of Kingston for more than 3 decades, primarily in his capacity as the chair of the planning board, and more recently as a newly minted member of the select board. Additional participation includes a long list of things like CIP committee chair, contributor to the master plan, historic district commission, solar committee, fireworks ordinance chair. Who does that? And at the statewide level, he served as the economic development director of community development finance agency, managing the New Hampshire tax credit and economic development block grant programs. Additionally, this position supported the New Hampshire Regional Development Corporations through funding and technical assistance. He currently works still as the Senior Economic Development Planner for the North Country Council. He has served as multiple terms as chair of Rockingham Planning Commission, is currently a member of the Executive Committee. With his unique ability to combine strategic guidance with practical articulation of the steps necessary to achieve RPC's vision and advance the current future services of our member communities of the region, he has immeasurably enhanced the Commission's growth and reputation while generously providing ongoing mentorship and support and informing commissioners to understand and become familiar with the RPC process. I want to thank Robert Kravitz for nominating this individual as well. Under his role. So it is a special privilege to work alongside this dedicated and talented public servant, sharing his vision and gaining a treasured and lasting friendship. This inaugural Mary M. Allen Award is given to Glenn Koppelman of Kingston. Real sign that you're staying in the building, so.
That is the sign.
All right.
You did well.
Honored just to be able to steward this fine. Has a lot of meaning. Gosh. You humble me.
Surprise.
Surprise. I've got to tell you that I've done over the years, planning field, particularly my relationship with the planning commission itself, all commissioners, staff, years, many new faces now, lots of been a real blessing in my life. You know, when something like this happens, the first thing that comes to my mind is that, well, if you hang around long enough, you're eventually going to get good enough to survive this long. You know, it sort of happen. But I really do appreciate it, and even more so that it's in memory of Mary Allen, who, a dear friend during her time with us. And she and I served on the commission for many years. You know, in years past, we spent a lot of time talking about planning issues and working together, and I respected Mary, and we had a really great relationship. So this means all the more because of that connection. You all heard each. I need more walls.
So, so that's the show.
People are coming out.
We'll eat some food, please. We technically need a motion to adjourn now. So we get a motion from James and a second for Jeffrey.
All right.
There you go. Thank you, James.
Yeah.